Hello, Booktube. We're back with Desert Island Books, and our castaway this week is very literary Kari. Take it away, Kari.
Hey guys, thank you so much, Shawn, for having me on this series. This is a really cool series, and I was very excited to participate, but this is really tough. I must tell you, this was tough. My name is Kari, for those of you who don't follow my channel, and I am a high school librarian. I was a history teacher for 10 years as well, so I do read a lot of nonfiction, a lot of historical fiction, things related to history, specifically John F. Kennedy. I do have a bit of a Kennedy fascination. I do like to read about and study the Cold War era in general, and also the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I do have a few collectibles from the era and things like that. I'm interested in collecting, some of his campaign buttons and records, and of course all of the newspapers and magazines and things like that. So that's just something that I like to do in my spare time. I also have you probably see, I guess, back there, a few little Peanuts things there. I do collect Peanuts memorabilia as well, so big fan of that. I do run in my spare time. That's one of my hobbies, and I like to do the half marathon distance, and I do have a long-term goal to do a half marathon in every East Coast state. So that's something I've been working on the last couple of years. I do help coach cross country, which is why I look like I've been on a desert island because it's about 90 degrees here, and we just wrapped up cross country practice. So I figured if there was any YouTube video I could show up for looking all kind of hot and sweaty, it would be Desert Island Books, because it kind of fits with the theme. So,
well, I don't think you can escape it at this time of the year anywhere.
That's right.
I just wanted to say the Peanuts. I didn't know that. I love that because I love the Peanuts. I want to get the whole sort of collected comic strips that are, and I've got the first one. I've read it several times. There's more wisdom in that book than in most, philosophy books, I think.
Yes.
You've got to actually see it. But anyway, that's an aside. So you've got your 8 books.
I do. Do you want me to just jump right in with the first one?
Yeah. Or is there anything else that you wanted to say, or about your channel? To talk about your channel a little bit.
Well, on my channel, I do a good bit of live shows. I do run a book club called the Black Hearts Book Club, and each month I do a different book. It could be a classic mystery. It could be nonfiction related to something that's a little bit odd or gory. It could be a thriller, a dark academia. So anything that has kind of a dark tone to it. And usually I try to get another booktuber to co-host the month with me, and we run a little Instagram chat throughout the month, and anybody can join in on that book club. And then at the end of the month, we do a live show, and that's been really fun. I do have this year all booked, which was nice. I was able to get other booktubers to join in on the fun, and I'm trying to work on next year's schedule. So if you are interested, Shawn, just throwing it out there, maybe you do a month with me if you're interested in that. I don't know if you would read maybe a classic mystery or any sort of kind of historical fiction mystery, something a little dark. It doesn't have to be too gory or anything if you're not into that. I try to keep it a good mixture of things, so hopefully, attract a different group every month. But I do read a lot of different stuff, so I'm not really one of those channels that's stuck on a particular genre. And if you watch any of my videos, like a recent reads or something, I mean, if I've read 3 books, they're all very different. Yeah, it's kind of random, I guess, my reading taste, but I like to try new things and see what I like. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm up for that, especially if it's next year. I think I have enough happening till the end of the year now.
Yeah, see, that is the problem with Booktube. It's like, you have all these plans and all these things you want to read and people you want to connect with on Booktube. And then, you start looking at the list of books you need to read for the month. And you're like, okay, I think I need to maybe back down on a lot of the plans. But yeah, I've seen some people's TBR videos get a little out of control.
Well, you can see my TBR just all around me.
Oh. So I guess I'll jump right in, Shawn, with the first book I chose, and that is Crossfire, The Plot That Killed Kennedy by Jim Marrs. Now, this is a pretty big book. This is one of the books that inspired the infamous film JFK, which was produced by Oliver Stone. And this book and that film, they really changed history a little bit, and people might think I'm giving the book too much credit there, but they really did, because it prompted the government here to pass the act that led to the Assassination Records Review Board, which started the release of documents related to John F. Kennedy's assassination. And every time there are documents released, my friends, of course, send me links and they're like, okay, here it is. The answer to the JFK assassination has to be, out there now, right? Well, there's still about 15,000 documents that are classified or heavily redacted that we know about. So I guess it's still a work in progress to get all that stuff declassified. But this book, I mean, there is no little bit of evidence or no rabbit hole that this author doesn't go down. And so I feel like this is one of those things that would help occupy my mind and my time if I was on a desert island. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme, but there's this guy and he's in front of a cork board. And he has all these Post-it notes and these strings and these things posted on there. And he kind of has this crazed look on his face. And he's in front of this corkboard kind of explaining what's going on. And, then there's a picture of a very studious looking professor, just pointing to a whiteboard. And the caption says, "What I think I look like when I talk about the JFK assassination and what I really look like." So yeah, my friends have sent that to me on occasion because, the JFK assassination, no matter your feelings on it, if you think there was a conspiracy or there wasn't a conspiracy, there's so much information out there about it that you could speculate and you could go down these rabbit holes for, weeks at a time. Just one little piece of evidence, start pulling a string and go down it. So, yeah, I would say this is probably the definitive book for me on the JFK assassination. So that's why I picked it. It was kind of tough. I was torn. I was like, do I pick one I haven't read or do I go with the one that kind of captures a lot of the conspiracy theories and that sort of thing? And I went with Crossfire.
Yeah, look, I guess the big question is why JFK that you started, because it clearly is one of the biggest mysteries, I guess, of the 20th century. But there are other ones.
Yes.
And do any of those tug at you as well because of the mystery, or is there something specific about JFK?
There is something specific about him because, obviously the 60s, just in general, of course you've got, Bobby Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. and, Malcolm X, and you've got a lot of political assassinations in that time period, not just in the US, but in other countries as well. And I just feel like 1963 is a very pivotal point in history, in the Cold War and just in US history. And I do feel like there was a political, societal, almost a psychological shift in the country at that time. I really think when you look back, the Kennedy assassination is one of those things that just changed our country, no doubt. And, not to get too far into the conspiracies here, because I don't want to take up the whole show with that, Shawn, but I do think that when you look at the trajectory of the country and the possibilities that were there with the Kennedy administration, I think there were some missed opportunities. I think that the absolute tragedy that was Vietnam, I think may have taken a different course. Obviously we were already involved in Vietnam. We already had thousands of troops in Vietnam at the time of his assassination. But based on what Kennedy said publicly and based on some of his national security action memorandums days before his assassination, it was obvious that he was going to start bringing those troops home. By the end of 1965, the hope was to have our troops back here. And we see within days of Kennedy's assassination, the Johnson administration passes a national security action memorandum that has the opposite effect. So essentially, he starts to increase U.S. involvement there. And, I think Vietnam is really one of those conflicts that really just scarred the country. Obviously you have all the troops that are scarred physically, mentally, families that are just devastated by losing so many young people. One thing that always stuck with me is that the average age of the U.S. soldier in Vietnam was 19. And I mean, that is just so sad to me, because even when you look at World War II, where we had a draft as well, the average age of the soldier was 25. And that's a huge difference. I'm someone who works in a high school. And so, that is something that really strikes me. So I feel like we still have some of those scars from Vietnam. And if Kennedy had survived, I think that may have turned out differently. Of course, this is all speculation, but
yeah. Well, that's a good enough reason to like it.
Yeah, and I mean, when I read Kennedy, I have a lot of the letters and papers in a compilation book from John F. Kennedy. I mean, we just don't have political figures anymore that were as articulate and witty and charismatic and really kind of captured everything that's great about America. Like, I feel like, JFK, yes, of course he had speechwriters, just like every president has, but clearly his fingerprint is on a lot of that stuff. And if you look at press conferences with John F. Kennedy, I mean, he is just so quick on his feet. He's so quick-witted. I just feel like, he is what you want a politician to be, how you would want a politician to represent your country. And unfortunately, I just don't see a lot of that in modern times. So
you've got literate to illiteracy and everything in between there, but illiteracy was too soon or too recent.
Yeah.
We won't need to name anybody. Won't need to name and shame.
Yeah, I don't want to get too political or anything, but it's inspiring. It gives you hope. I feel like when he became president, it was one of those times where, young people were really getting involved. They were starting to become active. And again, I feel like, Vietnam really kind of, put a damper on, what the youth could do, and really kind of tore the country apart. I know today we talk about how divisive things are, but, the 60s post JFK assassination, you can't get much more divisive than that. So I try to always remind myself of that as well when things look kind of grim. There were generations before us that had very, divisive situations and, tragedies and things, and we made it through. So, there's always hope that a JFK will return and
well, this decisive period and everything. Like I don't know what your next one is, but one of those books that you have there could segue into it, even though it's not of the 60s. It is of the 60s.
I'm going to assume you're talking about this one.
Yeah. Yep.
So, of course, I had to choose To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. And this edition is just absolutely gorgeous. And I did choose this because it is aesthetically pleasing. I mean, it is a gorgeous book. This is a Barnes & Noble edition, but it was inscribed by a friend of mine to me, and it is a special copy for me. But it is a special book because I was telling Shawn earlier, I don't really reread books. I like to read new things and lots of different types of books, but I did read To Kill a Mockingbird for a second time in 2020. So just after the pandemic hit, I wanted to read to Go Set a Watchman, the prequel to this, and I said, well, let me reread To Kill a Mockingbird because I haven't read it since high school. And I do not get emotional about things often, visibly emotional. And this reread of To Kill a Mockingbird made me cry. I mean, I was in tears over this book, and it really spoke to me. It really hit home. It gave me comfort at the time because this was a time period where the country it looked like on the news, just literally on fire. I mean, the country was breaking apart. It was so divisive. I just couldn't watch the news. And this book, it just spoke to me. It resonated with me. There were several quotes in it that just got me. They just got me. And it just gave me hope, reminded me that, at the end of the day, even though people, they can say their things on social media and they can do these outrageous things, but at the end of the day, we're all just folks. We're all just people. And, there are good people out there, and there are people who are willing to have conversations and stop screaming at each other and, listen. And that was something that I needed to hear, I think, at the time. And a lot of people did. I think that was a time where a lot of people were having some anxiety over just the unsettled state of things. So,
have you seen the film, this 1960s film with Gregory Peck?
I have, and I love also Robert Duvall in that film. I am a huge Robert Duvall fan. I love him. He is one of the greatest American actors, in my opinion. And that kind of actually segues into one of my other picks, Shawn, because I also put Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry on this list. And have you seen the Lonesome Dove miniseries?
Yeah, when it first came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've not read the book yet. That's the thing. I will next year, I think. I hope to.
Yes, I think it's one of those books that I just wanted to live in it. I just feel like, not literally live in it, but I just wanted to stay in these pages with these people, with this dialogue that just felt so real. It just felt so real to me. The author is just able to set this scene, and I just fell in love with Gus. I mean, Gus was my favorite character. I did a live show on it, and I think I gushed over Gus, for about an hour. But part of that may be due to the fact that I loved Robert Duvall in his portrayal of Augustus in the miniseries. And I'd seen the miniseries as a kid. My dad was into Westerns, so I had seen it. And I never really thought much about reading the book. And then I think I saw a couple people on Booktube who had read it, and I decided that I was going to read it. And this was just the great American novel to me. You know, I'm not a person who really reads Westerns. You know, that's not my gig, I guess. But this book, it didn't really read like just your average Western. I mean, to me, it kind of felt like literary fiction. And I know that's kind of a term people debate about and talk about, you know, what does that mean and that sort of thing. But I feel like there were so many, you know, broad themes and things in this book that I can't say enough good things about it. I just loved it. It was so witty. It was so funny. It's one of those books that I laughed out loud. I got upset about. I worried about these characters. Yeah, it was great. I think you'll love this reading experience, Shawn. When you get to this book, I think you'll love it.
I think I'm gonna wait until I don't know if you know Michael K. Vaughan did in June on the Range, which was great. It was Western, so a lot of people have read Lonesome Dove, but I'd already picked out stuff I wanted to read. So possibly next year. I'm not sure, but yeah, Robert Duvall is fabulous because it's sort of for that I read True Grit for June on the Range, and he's Lucky Ned Pepper in True Grit. So you see Boo Radley and Lucky Ned Pepper, and then I sort of think of him later as. Have you ever seen the film Tender Mercies?
I have not.
That is really good. If you like Robert Duvall, do watch that. Okay. That is really, really. It's a very small film, but it's really good. He I think it's him singing in it too.
Oh wow! Okay, nice.
But anyway, enough about Robert Duvall.
All right, my next pick is a book that I have not read. I started it at least once, maybe even twice, and never finished it because I didn't own it. So I checked it out from the library and I never renewed it or I guess put enough effort into finishing Stephen King's The Stand. This is over 1,000 pages, so I figure it will keep me occupied on this desert island, Shawn. And I do love Stephen King, but I will admit, sometimes he does have a tendency to go a little bit too in-depth into minor details and descriptions of things that we just don't need to know. I mean, I do enjoy the portrayal of, you know, the slice of life in whatever town we're in, but at a certain point, it's too much. And I think that might be one of the criticisms of this book, because I've heard, we were talking earlier, I've heard this is his greatest work. And then I've also heard the opposite. But sometimes in Stephen King's case, even though it was long, I still wanted more. And the best example of that is 11/22/63. And I think we all know why I wanted more in that, because it was about the JFK assassination. That did a great job of putting you in that place. So The Stand, I know it's long. It could be a winner for me and could keep me occupied. You know, I do like a post-apocalyptic, you know, dystopian type of work anyway. And I have a friend who rereads this every time she gets the flu. I don't know that I would do that considering the content of the book, but.
Well, I think it could be beneficial on a desert island. I've not read it, but from what I know about it, you'll be feeling very, very special of being alone and very happy to be actually alone.
Yeah, that might actually work out pretty good. The next book that I think will serve me well on a desert island is Cant Hurt Me by David Goggins. And this is basically his memoir. So David Goggins is the only person in history to have gone through Navy SEAL training, Army Ranger training, and Air Force Tactical Air Controller training. And I have not read this book, but I do know a lot about David Goggins, and it's one of those books that I have been meaning to read. I just haven't gotten around to it. But he is a very motivational force right now. If you are a runner like myself, he's one of those people that you come across in, your YouTube feed or whatever. But he used to be about 300 pounds, and he decided he wanted to be a Navy SEAL. Went to the recruiter's office, and the recruiter basically told him, this is probably not going to happen because the next group leaves in 2 months and you need to lose 100 pounds. And we were talking about this earlier. We're not saying this is healthy, and we're not advising anyone to do this, but this man lost 100 pounds in 2 months. And this book just talks about a lot of the things that he had to overcome. He could not read. He had dyslexia, and he couldn't read in high school. He had to overcome some abuse at home and things like that. So he really has a story that I think a lot of people can relate to. And he achieves these just unbelievable feats of just physical endurance and strength. But his point in all of it is that most of what holds us back is up here. And there's one thing that he talks about that he kind of made up that really speaks to me. But he says that it all boils down to what he calls the 40% rule. So what he says is that when your mind tells you to stop, to give up, you've only gone to about 40% of your true potential. And I don't know if any of the viewers out there have ever used a mantra before, but when I'm running long distances, that is one thing that kind of keeps my mind occupied. And so sometimes I'll have a, mantra like, it could be something simple like I can do this, or don't stop, whatever, just something you tell yourself over and over again to keep going. And the last race I ran, I said 40% over and over in my head. And it kind of mind tricked myself because I was too busy repeating myself. My mind couldn't really make the decision to stop, So, he really is one of those people I follow just on YouTube. I watch interviews with him and little motivational compilations that he does. But he is a force of nature. And, a lot of his motivation is filled with expletives, which I'm not someone who uses a ton of curse words. But because of his background as a Navy SEAL, you kind of expect a good bit of that. But, yeah, I think he has a message that a lot of people need to hear. And, we've gotten to a point where, everyone wants to be comfortable, and I think in our society, we've gotten too comfortable, and it's really when you go beyond that comfort zone that you see progress. I see kids all the time and they want to give up because they're not good at something, well, the mindset that he proposes is you need to do more of that thing. If you're not good at it, that just means you're not putting enough effort into it. You're not practicing enough, and now I think with some of our kids, we've taught them that, well, you're just not good at math. It's not that you don't need to practice math, maybe more. It's you're not good at math. So if I'm not good at math, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to practice. I'm not going to put the effort in because, I know what the outcome will be. And I think, just in general, of course, there are cases, that there's something physically, that would prevent you from doing something. But, in general, I think our biggest opponent is right up here.
Yeah, I think so I could maybe bring that back to books to a certain extent and I know I'm going to probably lose subscribers once I vocalize this.
Oh, no.
People bail on books too quickly. And it's the same type of thing. I can't do it. It's too difficult. That's all I'm saying.
Shawn called you guys out. He called you out. So go finish those books, people. Yeah, I agree. And I am someone who I used to never DNF anything. Like, even if it was the worst book, was not getting any enjoyment out of it. I just had to finish it because I started it. And I've gotten away from that. But I do agree. There are certain books that I think maybe people don't give their just due to. So, but that's definitely one I think would help me mentally survive this desert island I'm going to.
And survive, maybe reading The Stand as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe some practical tips there. The next one I put on here is The Art of Happiness by Epicurious. And I have not read this. But the reason it's on my radar is because Mark from Book Time with Elvis and we read a book called The Swerve by, I think it's Stephen Greenblatt, maybe. But in that book, it's nonfiction. He's talking about the poem by Lucretius called On the Nature of Things, and essentially how he kind of goes back and traces a lot of, Renaissance ideas and a lot of the shifts, the swerve really, that happened in that time period to the discovery of this poem by Lucretius. And he was influenced by Epicurus, and a couple things that were brought out in that book were, essentially how Epicurus got a bad rap. And, a lot of the things that people associate with, Epicureanism, just excess and, doing whatever you want, that those are not the reality of what Epicurus was talking about. So I'm just really intrigued by that. And I feel like anything that's philosophical and discusses life and death, those things that I will be facing on this island, I feel like that might help me come to grips with my situation and hopefully make the best of it.
Yeah, it's Epicurious has been sort of co-opted and warped for sort of the internet, I think, these days, and in YouTube, sadly, because there is a lot of good stuff in there. I remember reading it when I was in high school and really enjoyed it, and now I'm thinking I should reread that. Well,
yeah, I'm definitely going to give it a go. And for a guy who I think he only owned like a couple of cloaks, and he, ate bread and olives and maybe the occasional bit of cheese as a treat, that's not really lining up with what most people think about him and his philosophies. So yeah, that one's a good one. And I was kind of torn because I also have a copy of the poem On the Nature of Things by Lucretius. So I was like, I don't know. So either one of those would work.
Yeah, that's a bit of a slog at times.
Yeah, that was the thing. I'm like, well, I'll have plenty of time, but I don't know. I'll probably be facing enough adversity. Yeah. And the last book I have with me, I don't have my last pick actually here with me. This one is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And have you ever read this one, Shawn?
No, I am aware of it, but I've not read it. No.
This is it is a dark academia book, and it's one of those books that when I started reading it, it just was so atmospheric. It's set at a college in New England, and I feel like I'll get to experience all the seasons and all of the atmosphere with this book. Even though I will be on this deserted, place, I'll get to experience that through Donna Tartt. And the way she writes, she's one of those people, when I read her work, it's almost like everything else I've ever read is garbage compared to this. Not to be too dramatic, but, it's just one of those writers that it reads kind of like a classic. In certain ways, even though the content is not necessarily that. It's just, she's a different type of writer. And I think one of the reasons she appeals to me as well is because she's kind of enigmatic herself. And, I love a good mystery. But she has only written 3 books. And I have all 3. I've read this and The Goldfinch, but I have not read The Little Friend because I'm kind of saving it. She only writes a book every 10 years or so. So, you kind of have to savor it. But she's pretty interesting. She doesn't do a lot of interviews. If you look her up on YouTube, you can't really find a lot of her out there. A couple little Charlie Rose clips and, maybe one appearance on CBS, Sunday morning or something. She's kind of mysterious herself. So, I don't know. I enjoyed this book when I read it. It's one of the few books that I've actually reread. Again, I don't reread many books. I can count on one hand how many books I've reread. But this one was definitely one. And she does it right. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It is a mystery, so I don't want to really spoil, spoil the mystery there. But it's one of the few mysteries where they really start out with the crime. I mean, who's been murdered in the first few pages. And usually when that happens, I don't know, a lot of times those books kind of fall flat for me, but she does that well in this book. So yeah, I definitely have to take this one. This is just one of my favorites.
Yeah, I since watching Booktube and doing Booktube, she crops up a lot. And that's the one thing I hate about Booktube is the fact that I was perfectly comfortable in my comfort zone of basically 1965, everything pre-1965. Now these new things are creeping in that I want to read, and it's not right.
It is not right. I mean, there's too many out there, and it's funny because I write down all these books in various places and on sticky notes, and and then it's like I need to just have one list, but I like to write things down and not necessarily just click them on Goodreads or whatever. But then I'm finding these random titles of things I've written down. But for every positive review you find, you find a negative. So it's kind of interesting to see everyone's thoughts. And I think she's one of those authors because you can look up The Secret History, and you'll find plenty of rant review videos on it. But I do have an author signed copy of The Goldfinch from her, and my husband actually got it from her hand. So my husband actually met her, didn't know who she was, but he met her and told her that his wife liked to read and that she was a librarian. And so she gave him a copy, actually wrote him a personal note in it, which is kind of cool because I don't think she does that very often. So
well, that's the great thing for collectors is that the author has actually held the book.
Yeah.
Greasy little fingers are on there. But I love about that you don't want to finish reading.
Yeah.
And I have several authors like that. There's one that I've still been successful at, but your last book I broke down when I first came to England because I needed something to read, and it was the only thing that I could find in the local library that I wanted to read.
Oh no!
So I have ruined it for well, you'll introduce the last one.
Yeah, I've saved The Little Friend by Donna Tartt, and I don't know if I'll break down eventually and read that. But yeah, my last pick is going to be the complete Sherlock Holmes. I have the 2 volumes of that at home, and I just couldn't. I mean, you cannot go wrong with Sherlock Holmes. I mean, it's atmospheric. No one does the detective novel quite like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, in my opinion. And, I love the team pairing between Sherlock and Watson. I think Watson is underrated, and I do enjoy those mysteries. And I haven't read all of them, so I've only read probably 4 or 5. So that would be something that I've never read before to take to this island and occupy my time and my mind. And yeah.
Yeah, I've always liked them. I had something in my hands here before because I was going to show it. I think I can reach it. I hope. Just give me a second. It is Sherlock Holmes related. Yes, there it is.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
I started because I move stuff around, and it's like, you know, I refine stuff, and it was like, yeah, I got to keep this aside. So Sherlock Holmes as a pipe smoker.
I mean, they will produce anything with Sherlock Holmes on it, will they not?
Yeah, well, basically, yeah. There is tons of stuff, but yeah. So I would say if you really love Sherlock Holmes, like maybe read the novels, but just, you know, slowly, you know, just read a short story here and there, because you always want, like, the other author that I've been successful so far is Edgar Allan Poe, and I don't want to finish reading his stuff too soon.
It's funny you said that, because when I got to my last book, I was torn because I also have the complete Edgar Allan Poe in a really cool edition, and I was torn between those two. And my husband, I think I told you, he finally intervened, because I was having such a hard time. I'm like, I just don't know. It's too hard. Just 8 books. But he's like, look, you just have to pick. Just go with the moment. You know, just understand that next week you might say, man, I should have taken this book. It's all good. It's for fun. But he said, look, Edgar Allan Poe, that might be a real downer for you. he was worried that that would be a downer for me. So he thought Sherlock Holmes would be a little bit more appropriate, maybe keep me occupied, and I don't know, maybe not be quite as macabre, but you know, a lot of my stuff is kind of dark.
Yeah, being macabre is fun at times.
Yeah, and that's funny because you know, I'm a very positive person, and I am a very happy person generally, but I do, you know, the Black Hearts Book Club, and I enjoy kind of that darker theme of book, and the macabre and the morbid and the gory. That stuff is interesting to me. And what's interesting about that, one of the last books we read for book club, it was called Gory Details. And it's written by a National Geographic editor. And she wrote a blog called Gory Details, basically about morbid and kind of disgusting little bits of science. And in that book, she kind of explains why a lot of people feel that way. You know, when we are interested in these, what a lot of people see as weird or dark things, it's really our attempt to understand the world around us and, you know, our place in it and how we function. So it's really not that weird.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, maybe feel a little bit better.
So yeah, those are great picks. So you got some music as well.
I do. I chose Time Out by the Dave Brubeck Quartet. And this was an album that was released in 1959. This is actually the first jazz album to sell over 1 million copies. And, you know, I'm sure even if you don't really like jazz or know much about it, and I don't really know much about like the history of jazz, or, you know, I'm not a musician, so I can't tell you like the timing and, you know, the intricacies of it or anything like that. But I would think a lot of people out there probably know the song Take 5, which is one of my favorites. And so that's why I picked this album. It's one that I've listened to. I used to put it on in my classroom during my planning period while I was working. I've even ran to it before. I mean, it's just, you can't go wrong with it. It's great.
Yeah, I like jazz, and that's his stuff. Well, the quartet, and like late 50s is about as well. It just goes back to everything. Pre 1960 is good. You know, yes. Post 1960, not so good.
Yeah, I will say that definitely. I definitely agree with that as far as jazz goes. And even, I think that's one of the reasons my Kennedy assassination kind of fascination started, is because I was fascinated with the 1950s and 60s. The music, the clothing, the cars. I don't know. As a preteen and a teen, I was like listening to Frank Sinatra. I was not, necessarily too hip, I guess. I mean, I fit in and everything, but I did like that era of music and stuff.
What about Dean Martin?
What's that?
What about Dean Martin?
Oh yeah, you can't. I mean, the Rat Pack. Hello, you gotta love the Rat Pack. I mean, is there any group of guys cooler or funnier? I mean, Sammy Davis Jr., you just, that whole era where you had real entertainment and real musicians. And yeah, it's just a golden era.
You've got to watch or pull up then. What was it just put in, Here Come the Judge.
Okay.
It's called Here Comes the Judge. And I can't remember the 60s. It was Rowan and Martin was the comics, the comedians. But I can't think of the name of the show. But if you put Here Come the Judge and Sammy Davis,
it'll pop up.
Yeah, you'll be laughing for days. I guarantee that.
And what's funny is, even later stuff like I don't know if you've ever seen the film Cannonball Run.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I mean, Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin in that one, they're hilarious. I mean,
well, yeah, because they're both dressed up as Catholic priests at one point, I think.
Of course, that film, and a lot of stuff from that era is not politically correct now, but I just love it. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. No, I'll see if I can find it actually as well, and I'll put it down. So if anybody else is interested in hearing, they might be offended, but tough. Tough.
Sorry about it.
It's funny regardless. It is hilarious. This thing. It's really bugging me that I can't think of the. It was a weird, like a stream of conscious comedy show. That just, they did skits and all sorts of stuff, and they had guests on, and I'm blanking on it completely. So let's move on.
No, that was a great era, and of course, lots of Kennedy connections there. Not to circle back to Kennedy, but I have to. He was also, a lot of people don't really know that he was also considered for a time a member of the Rat Pack, and of course, they all had little nicknames. His was Cheeky Baby. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, lots of cool. I've never read like a biography of Sammy Davis Jr. or Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin, but I'm sure that would be fascinating.
Well, I think Dean Martin's, definitely would be if there's the stories of his. It is like you said, politically incorrect, but the drunk stories are always fun. It's like Peter O'Toole and Richard Harris getting on, 80s and TV shows, David Letterman and those, and just talking about, going out on drunks. It's hilarious. But yeah, with Kennedy, I can't reach that one because Kennedy's father was instrumental. Well, he did a lot of stuff in early Hollywood. Well, Joseph Kennedy.
Yeah.
So I have a book about him and his dirty dealings.
Gloria Swanson, that whole escapade. Which, gosh, what is the movie? Sunset Boulevard?
Yeah.
Oh man, that movie. So, I mean, she was the washed up Hollywood actress trying to make the comeback, and that was a phenomenal comeback. That film, I know we're kind of going off on a weird tangent here, but that film is great. That does film noir so well. I mean, but yeah, that whole thing with Joe Sr. and Hollywood and how he did her, that was just despicable. But
I have to say something about Sunset Boulevard. One of the, I don't know if it's on all the DVDs and Blu-rays, but they had an introduction that they didn't do, which I thought it would have been great. It started in the morgue and all you see is the foot with the toe tag on, and it's what's his name, the character, oh, I can't remember his name now, the actor, but anyway, him doing a narration, being dead.
Yeah.
And I thought that would have been great, but yeah, it might not have flown as a film though.
I'll have to look at my copy, because I think I have a Blu-ray, and I'll see if maybe that's in the extras. And it may have even been on that copy. I thought I remember maybe it's starting at the pool with the body in the pool or something. But I'll have to look and see, because that would have been, yeah.
It's cool, but yeah, you could just see it going a little too far.
Too far, yeah. Yeah, no doubt. No, and those some of those Hollywood stories, you can get into some real interesting things, like, even with the Rat Pack, and just looking at the time period, and, of course they're a mixed race group, and they've got Sammy Davis Jr. there, and, what they went through, trying to, perform. And, Frank Sinatra, he did kind of stand his ground on that for the most part. Places that would not allow Sammy Davis Jr. to perform, he just didn't perform. I mean, they were tight. They were a good little group of entertainment. And yeah, of course, there was the big fallout between Sinatra and Kennedy, because
oh, we got another freeze up here, but hopefully Kari will come back. You back?
We're back.
Yeah. Oh.
I think what it was, we were talking about Kennedy a little bit too much, and they've got that flagged.
Could be.
I guess I need to talk about my luxury item.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one more thing about the FTD. You're talking about Sammy Davis, and there was Nat King Cole at the time, had a huge TV show, but yeah, he wasn't allowed in places too. So it's all part of that period, which is an interesting period in American society, and history. But anyway, yeah, let's go to your luxury item.
So for this, I was torn, because I'm like, I don't know how strict, Shawn is going to keep to the rules here. And I'm someone who, if you ever watch any live show, I'm always drinking water. I usually have this big water bottle, and I stay well hydrated, and I cannot go anywhere without my water. So if I could bring an unlimited supply of drinkable water, I would bring that. But I'm guessing I probably couldn't bring that. So then I started thinking practically. And so it came down to two things. One is my Bear Grylls knife. I didn't bring it, but it's about that. The blade's about that long. It's great knife. And the second is a water filtration system that I have. It's just like, you could literally use it in a stream or a mud puddle or anything and get drinkable water out of it. I actually keep that in the trunk of my car with a duffel bag full of clothes, and it's like a survival kit in my trunk. And I'll never forget, my husband, we may have even been married, but we were at least engaged by this time. He went in my trunk and he's like, "What's in this bag that you have back there?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, that's just like extra clothes, toothbrush, extra glasses, And he's like, "That's a bug out bag." He's like, "Why do you have like a survival bag?" And I'm like, "Well, you never know. Like, I think about all sorts of possibilities. You have a house fire, and I wanted to make sure I had clothes for work, enough clothes to go to work, and, make it if something happened and I couldn't get in my house or whatever." So one of the things that I have in that bag is a water purification device. And yeah, so I was down to the two, and I figured, since I'm in a desert, and I don't really know what the water availability is going to be like. So I think I'll go with the knife because any survival show I've ever watched, and I used to watch a lot of those Bear Grylls survival things like Man vs. Wild and Running Wild with Bear Grylls. The number one thing that they need and they use a lot is the knife. So, I mean, got to go with that.
It's very practical. But I do need to know, what book or books do you have in your survival bag?
You know what is funny, and I almost brought this book. I have a book called 98.6, The Art of Keeping Your Ass Alive by Cody Lundeen. And Cody Lundeen is actually a survivalist who specializes in desert conditions. So yeah, he actually does specialize in that. He's got long blonde hair, usually wears a headband, goes barefoot, and I forget the name of the show he was on. Dual Survival, I think, because it was him and another guy, so there was two of them. And he was kind of an expert in desert survival. I think he's maybe from Arizona or something, but so yeah, I do actually have a survivalist book. I don't know how, adept I would be at actual survival, Shawn. I've read the book, but sometimes reading the book is not the same. It's not the practical application. So let's just hope I never actually end up on a desert island.
Well, when Christina did it, like, her island was a magical island that provided wool for her. Okay, I have to accept that. So yours is a magical island that has fresh water. Yes. Well, it's not really magical, I suppose, but
that's drinkable, that I don't have to worry about contracting any sort of, amoeba or flesh-eating disease or anything, Yeah.
And you have lots of coconut milk.
And I figured the knife would come in handy with that, because I was like, there could be oasis out in the desert, and I could have some coconuts, so gotta be able to break into those. And that parallel with Kennedy here. Kennedy and his men, after they were stranded when his PC boat was hit in World War II, they were stranded on an island for a week, and they did survive on coconuts. And he actually wrote the rescue message on a coconut shell, inscribed it in a coconut shell, and some natives took it to some nearby Australian forces, I believe. And that's one of the ways they were rescued. But yeah.
Okay, well, since we've gone complete circle. So what are your future plans for, well, anything, but I guess for your channel? You've mentioned your book club. What's coming up for next month's? Well, let's say September's book club.
So August we are doing Bunny, and the author of that is Mona Awad, A-W-A-D, I believe. That's a relatively new book. That is a dark academia book, so kind of think The Secret History-ish, but it's shorter. And I'm going to be doing that with Shannon from Shannon's Bookish Musings and Music. So if anyone is interested in that, you can pop over to my channel. I'm probably going to do an announcement video for that in a couple days. I usually just do like a couple minute clip just showing what the next book pick will be. But so that'll be for August. And then September, I'm doing a thriller with Katie Reads and Rants. And actually, I narrowed it down to 3, and then I asked her to pick because I couldn't pick. So we haven't officially decided on that. October will be The Five, which is about Jack the Ripper's 5 victims. November, it's a Kennedy assassination book. And I think it's The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. And I'll be reading that with Tom, LA Books. He's read a couple of JFK books with me. He's kind of interested in the topic as well. So we always have a good time discussing that. And then December is Mark from Book Time with Elvis. He's going to be the co-host with me for The book is called Dead Mountain, and it's about the mystery at the Dyatlov Pass, if you're familiar with that. And it's funny because when I decided I wanted to read that book, I thought of Mark. I thought, this looks like something he would like, and it's nonfiction. So I asked him to co-host with me, and wouldn't you know, he's already read the book. But he really liked it, and he liked it so much he wanted to reread it. So I was like, well, my instincts were pretty good on that one, I suppose. So got a lot of cool picks coming up, and we'll do some live shows for each one of those. And I do recent reads videos occasionally, and a few tags here and there. And if I'm invited to do something really cool like this, I try to do that because this was a really neat idea. And it's always nice to connect with other booktubers. I really do enjoy the live stuff a little bit better, Shawn, than kind of recording. I feel like I'm a little bit stiff. It's a little bit awkward. I feel like I'm really hard on myself, and I re-record things and try to edit, and it just becomes a little bit stressful. Whereas with a live, I know if I mess up, there's someone there to catch me. There's another person usually to kind of pick up the slack if I let it go. And it's just fun to get to know people and talk books with good folks. So
there's no editing here. So
yeah,
as if it's live. That's
it. And that's one thing I really like about it is it's out of my hands. So I don't really worry about it. It's nothing to worry about. And, it's just a lot of fun.
It is. Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll put all those links down below. I'll put Kari's channel down and any other links that you want highlighted. And but this was great. So thank you very much. Stick around after we end here. I wanted to we'll hatch something up for next year for your book thing at some point.
Nice.
But yeah, I want to again thank you. It was really great, and taking time out to do this because I'm one of those lucky people that don't have anything to do.
Well, you got plenty of books to read behind you, Shawn.
Yeah, I've read all those.
Now you're just showing off.
I got lots of films I haven't watched yet, so there's something to do. Anyway, again, thank you, and everybody, will see you again next time.
Bye, guys.